Every story has its drive, this stake that drives the characters forward. It constitutes the core of the main story, the thread to follow. Sometimes the world is in imminent danger. Sometimes the characters themselves are on the clock, rushing after a deadline or an individual. Or we might be looking for answers or salvation. Whatever it is, it's important. Maybe we are looking for an adoptive daughter who disappeared and must find her before an eldritch threat catches up with her, racing across— Oh hey, this lady needs help with her frying pan. Hello, how may I help you? Yes, we are going to get distracted today. It's time to look at side stories. To be clear, I'll be looking into narrative side content, so essentially side quests with a bit of unwritten storytelling on the side.
Up for a few rounds of Gwent?
Not today. I consult howlongtobeat.com every time I'm about to begin a new game, to know if it's going to be a small endeavor or if it will devour several months of my life. The playtimes referenced there are interestingly separated into 3 categories that represent 3 different approaches to narrative games. The first type is main story. It accounts for people who only care about the central plot and do not have time or interest in helping an old lady with her frying pan. It's main course only, no appetizer, no dessert, check please. Side content has a reputation of being underwhelming, which brings some of us to ignore it completely. The second category, which How Long to Beat named Main plus Extra, is comprised of people who basically pick and choose among the side stories presented to them. The way it's initially presented probably has a lot of bearing on this choice, but more on that later. The third and last category is for completionists. You know, when you need to check every box, fill every list, gather every collectible, every single one. I'm in that category to a degree. I feel the compulsion to get all those little icons off the map. If there's story attached, it's imperative for me to experience it. If it's a minigame or a complementary game system, I have to at least try it. If it's garbage to swim to, I'll do it. I'll get it all. Okay, I guess I have my limits. What's the repetition between these 3 categories of people? Judging from a quick look at How Long to Beat's data for popular games, the ones with the most playtime recorded, it seems to be a similar number of completionists to main storists. Yes, that's a word now. But the majority is clearly in the middle ground, the ones who pick and choose. This begs the question, what makes some side content engaging and some other not so much? Let's take a look at one of the earliest side quests from The Witcher 3. So, this guy, Odolon, needs help. His daughter has fallen ill and she needs fresh water to drop her fever. Except the well is poisoned by the presence of a wraith, and when ghosts are involved, who you gonna call? That's a job for a witcher. Mechanically, this is quite simple. You call your horse, you get on your horse, you go there, you activate your bat scanner, eagle vision, witcher sense to look at a few items, you fight a monster, you call your horse gets stuck on a fence, you move away a little bit, you call your horse is still stuck, you go back to the quest giver on foot. That's it, really. Had you seen this on a poster somewhere, the whole endeavor would not have been particularly enticing. But what sells it is the way it's presented to you. The quest giver is framed through a carefully designed cutscene and is given life by the performance of an actor, delivering a compelling story. For the player, it's just killing a baddie and getting a reward. But for this man, it's getting rid of the specter that threatens the life of his child, and might claim even more victims because the well of the village is now poisoned. It's his whole world, that's his main story. There's a common writing principle that says every character is the main character of their own story. If you feel, even for a moment, that this side quest is the thing that matters most, that's it, you're hooked. And you will want to deal with that, not just as a game mechanic, but for a personal reason. Some games have side quests in them that are generated procedurally. They're mechanically the same: kill something, get an item, deliver stuff to someone. But without a personal hook to get the player involved, those are completely boring. It's the personal, emotional element that gets us interested. We latch onto this human connection and we start caring. Without that bit of narrative fluff around the mission, all that's left is a meaningless task. Another thing that gets our attention is originality, the uniqueness of a character or a situation. It is, once again, what makes the situation look real, like the people we talk to are alive and their needs matter. This enlivening of a game's world owes a lot to side content. And it's not just the side quests, but much more than that. The extra bits of dialogues and interactions with NPCs, the stories written in the environment itself, read in a way through exploration, all this contributes to making a world more compelling to engage in. This is one of the many benefits side content brings to a game. Another one is that it's a change of pace, an opportunity for something suddenly more mundane or more exciting, and this choice is in the hands of the player. It also gives writers and quest designers a space to try something different. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the Yakuza series. The main story is very dark and serious, a complex tangle of conflicts fueled by honor, greed, betrayal and revenge. Meanwhile, in the side quests, there's a very healthy diversity there, and it never really breaks the mood of the main story if you don't want it to. The change of pace is up to you. As I mentioned earlier, side content has a bad reputation, that of mediocrity, of a subpar feeling only meant to fluff up the playtime of a game. But side stories don't have to be shallow afterthoughts. When treated with the same care that is due the sacrosanct main story, they can become beautiful stories of their own, sometimes even more memorable than the central plot. When that happens, we barely even think of those parts of a game as side quests. The story of the Bloody Baron in The Witcher 3 is technically an optional quest, but after a mandatory meeting with the man and learning a bit about his plight, many of us didn't think of this quest as optional anymore. We had to get to the bottom of it. The same goes for the loyalty missions of Mass Effect 2. I have yet to meet anyone who thought, I don't care, and finished the game without completing them. And sometimes the lines between main story and side content are so blurred, everything seems like a bit of both. In Disco Elysium, the main story apparently revolves around solving a murder case. But honestly, when I played it, I assumed the main objective was survive the world's most intense hangover while trying to make sense of the hauntingly beautiful sorrow that seeps from the cracks of this improbable world. And I still think I was on point. There's no way solving a murder case involves letting my ancient reptilian brain sing karaoke. And I know the karaoke was optional, but that's kind of the point. Whether it's mandatory or not has nothing to do with quality. We've all experienced amazing moments that were not on the main path of the journey. I recently tried going through a game as quickly as possible while ignoring all optional objectives, and then a second time with a completionist mindset. Ironically enough, it turned out to be a perfect example as to how a game can be profoundly changed by its side content. The game is Asterigos, Curse of the Stars, It is often described as a Souls-like, but that comparison only applies to very superficial aspects of its design and really doesn't do it justice. During my first playthrough, I only experienced a cursory view of the story, both as a whole and on specific events and individuals. My understanding of the plot was sufficient to elicit the minimum interest required for the player to have a goal and the basic motivation, but going through the same story a second time with all the side content gave me a brand new perspective, and I understood everything differently: people's personalities, their motivations, the many events that led to the city of Aphis and its inhabitants being what they are. Everything was different. Here are 3 of the most important characters you get to meet, and my impression of them in each playthrough. As you can see, every character appears in a completely different light, just because of the information we learned through the side content. Volkin's kindness and positivity make her seem quirky and adorable, and at first it seems like that's all there is to it.
Hey sweetie, what's up?
But piecing up her backstory through exploration, dialogue and side missions reveals a surprisingly dark past and a lot of trauma. Her personality hits differently when you know what lies beneath the surface. And it's not just them. About every character you meet and every part of Ephesian culture are seen under a different light when you know more about them. It's almost like experiencing a different story. Asterigos is truly a remarkable case of shaping a narrative around its main thread, like it's woven in an outside layer of optional interactions. All side quests in the game are basically fetch quests when you deconstruct them to their mechanical aspect. But the narrative is what makes them worthwhile. The fact that so much of the narrative is optional makes information itself a quest reward. The side missions given by NPCs in this game give no experience, no currency, rarely an item to equip. The reward is the story itself. The motivation is the emotional hook I was talking about earlier. And here, in my opinion, lies the key to satisfying narrative side content. If the motivation is extrinsic, experience, power, gear, a lot of players will undertake an activity they are not fundamentally interested in. This often leads to disappointment. If a side quest is not compelling by itself, no amount of in-game reward will make it a satisfying experience. And the same is true for any part of any game, really. Grinding for rewards can often be a very dreary endeavor. Would we do it if there was no carrot? If the answer is no, then there's a good chance we will come out of it with more bitterness than satisfaction. Intrinsic motivation is hard to evoke, but it's a core ingredient of side activities that are remembered fondly. I wanted to help that guy, and I felt compelled to find the family of the Bloody Baron and get to the bottom of their family drama. On one side, there is the hook. It gets you or it doesn't. This looks fun. I care about this person. I want to know what happens. And on the other end is the absence of a clear external reward. Those two factors help filter out people who would have a bad time with the content proposed to them. In the end, it is up to each of us to choose which content we want to engage with. But it's also important that we don't feel pressured in doing something that doesn't interest us. Say, Mr. Geralt, is it true that you witches don't feel any emotions?
No, I'm actually deeply empathetic and very sensitive. I just hide it behind a gruff mask of impassible stoicism in order to conform to an outdated toxic vision of masculinity.
What?
I'm Batman.